Hey everybody, this is Cateroll Hunter, and this is part 2 of a huge silver purchase I made. I got a whole bunch of really old silver, well under spot, but there was so much I couldn't get through it. So today we're going to look at all sorts of other goodies here that I couldn't get to. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Cateroll Hunter, and we're right in the middle of looking through this huge purchase of really old silver I got. We looked at the 50-cent pieces and the dollar coins. We didn't get to look at the quarters and all the other stuff here. I paid $1,300 for everything in here, and if we just look at the silver, that's about 35 times face, and that is a great deal. And what a difference just a couple of days makes. When I posted the video a couple days ago, I was looking at the spot price of silver and what the multiple in face value was, and silver has shot up significantly in the last few days. So now every dollar face is worth $47.24. So $78.72 Canadian per ounce. That is crazy. So we're really at historical highs. We kind of have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt, because by the time I post this video in the next few days, it could have come back down that far or even farther. But it's pretty fun to look and see that the tally I had on the screen previously, when you account for the recent change in silver, everything I got here is actually already worth well more than what I paid for it, and even more than it was just a couple days ago. So that's really cool. In today's video, we're going to look at the quarters. We didn't get that far. There's a whole little box here of what appears to be dimes and some old Canadian 5-cent pieces and a couple of other things, it looks like, too. And then stuff that I don't think is silver here, including some stuff in flips and some really old stuff. You can see a date on there, 1837. So I think where I'm going to start, I've already got the quarters here, and I can see there's some Newfoundland in here, 20-cent pieces. That doesn't surprise me because we had lots of Newfoundland coins over here. I'm going to sort these all out, and we'll see what we've got here. Hopefully, we're looking for some gems. I already got a great deal, but you never know if there's a key date or anything really cool in here. That could just make this deal that much better. Okay, well, I'm not yet done. I'm bringing you in because I'm partway through the sort here. I'm sorting them out by the Canadians down here, the Newfoundland up there. I just picked up a 20-cent piece. I was about to put it in the Newfoundland pile, and I did a bit of a double take as I looked at it, and this is incredible. And this might be the coin of the hunt, the coin of the purchase. I'm not sure yet. Check this out. This is 20 cents, 1858, as I throw it on the table here. And this is from Canada. This is a single year issue. Canada only issued a 20-cent piece in 1958, I think, or 1858. I think there was a pattern in 1871, but it was never issued for circulation. Then, of course, we changed it to the quarter, the 25 cents. It was more aligned with what was happening in the States, I think, at the time. But a 20-cent piece, 1858. This is incredible. And look at how much detail we have on here. Tons of detail on Queen Victoria. This is a different portrait than on the other Canadian coinage. Lots of great detail. I have one of these in my collection. I'm going to go get it. I think I paid about $90 for it. I think it's worth considerably more than that, or this coin here is worth considerably more than that. I think I'll show you mine first before we look more closely at this one. So here is the 20-cent coin from my collection. I've got it graded at a VF. There's not as much detail. If you look at the date there, the date is a little bit worn. There's not as much detail in the leaves. If I flip it over, there is Victoria. This one is pretty dark and toned, and I apologize for the glare on the flip, but we've got less detail in the Queen's hair. This is still a pretty nice coin, but it is hold. Somebody was wearing this as jewelry. That's why I got it for $90. This one that we picked up in this purchase does not have that impairment, and we can see a lot more detail in the leaves and the date. We can see Lots of detail in the hair. There looks like there might be a scratch below the base of the queen, which is really unfortunate. But I would put this in a bit of a higher VF grade. We'll look and see what's happening on the base of the queen there. But let's put this under the scope, just get a closer look. So there is the queen. I've got this compared to a Coins in Canada very fine example, just one of the examples they show on the photo grading. This one here is a dime. It is not the quarter. They or the 20-cent piece, I should say. They didn't have an example necessarily, but it's similar portrait here. And just under there, definitely a little bit of a gouge and some kind of a scrape along there. So that's going to take away from it for sure. But otherwise, we've got some great detail in the leaves and the crown. It is certainly an upgrade from the one that I had here with the big hole in it. Well, let's flip that over and see the queen. We can see we've got even less detail on the hair here on this one here. This was still a nice coin when I got it. It was about the best example I could find at the best price, because anything that didn't have a hole that was even twice as much money had, in some cases, you could barely make out the 20 cents. So I was happy to get this, but I am super ecstatic to get this guy right here. Let's have a look in the Charlton catalog. I think there are some varieties on this one, if I recall. So here is the entry for the province of Canada, 1858. And I think you can see why I was getting pretty excited about this coin. I paid just over $8 essentially for this coin based on the silver price. And look at these values here. And these are a little bit out of date, and I'll give you some additional context there. There are some varieties to look for, particularly the re-engraved 5. It's going to have thicker features, and the plain 5. And then there are some very specific, what they call them blundered eye in different parts of the motto or legend. We'll put it under the scope and look for those to see which of them they are. You'll see that they're almost all about the same price. There is a metal orientation one. This is not it. You saw me flip it over in coin orientation. So that's not it. But basically, they're all worth hundreds of dollars. And if they're in a VF, which I think this one is, this coin is worth several $100s. And we'll look a little bit more closely at where it might be now, because these prices are out of date for sure. So here's the difference between the plain 5 and the re-engraved 5. And basically all of the features are thicker. And you can see just at the top of that 5 right here, there's a little bit of a bump where the 5, I guess the re-engraving you could see, but a big ball there and a lot more thickness here. And I think that's what we've got. I see a little something up there, but look at how big this part of the 5 is, that part of the 5. So I think that's the re-engraved 5. The other thing we need to look for is whether or not we've got any of these blundered eyes in Victoria, Gratia, or Day. So let's just take a peek at those. In each of those cases, we would see part of the eye up here or up there. I'm not really seeing the eye in Victoria. It should be about halfway up. Not seeing that. We'll go look at this next one here. I don't really see it there either. And in Gratia, we would see it. That's possible. I see it a little bit marked. It's a little hard to tell. Like I said, they're all about, worth about the same, so it doesn't really matter. What we really want to find out is, what is this trending at? And one of the things that I did was get a subscription somebody had suggested with looking at my last video of the Canadian Coin News, because their price trends are updated bi-weekly. So I'm going to tell you what that is for this coin. So according to Canadian Coin News, the plain 5 in a VF20 is trending at $500. The re-engraved 5, which is probably the more common variety, is trending at $280. So this coin, I did way better than my $8 in silver. This is just incredible. I'll have to look back and see if any of the other coins that we picked up here are actually trending quite a bit higher than what I'm seeing in the Charlton catalog. But this just tells me, this is, even with the scratch on the bottom there, this coin is worth well over a couple $100, and that is just incredible. I'm going to flip this up because this is an upgrade to my collection. This is just an incredible find in here. Okay, I finished sorting those all out, and there were a few that are dateless, and this is more what you might expect to find in the junk silver bin when you're looking at old silver. And if I flip this over, we see Queen Victoria. This is in pretty rough shape on the reverse. You can't make out 25 cents. You can see, you can't even really see the details. Oh, I can just sort of see that the crown is there and the bottom of the wreath, but I can't see a date. You can't make out any of those details. So there are some diagnostics if you wanted to kind of narrow it down. There are different obverses that were used, and the Charlton catalog allows you to see some of the distinguishing features. So it's things like the lip and some of the position of letterings, just even the shape of the face is different. So we could take this one and put it under the scope, for instance, and we could look at the features like, is the lip straight or is it on an angle? What's the shape of the hair here? Just a quick look tells me I think this is probably obverse 2. It's got a bit of a curled lip. Obverse 3 has a straight lip. We don't have that. And we've also got more of a rounded feature here in the hair. You can sort of see that there. So I think it's probably this one, and it could be in any number of dates here. We might never know. It doesn't matter. It is certainly worth its weight in silver. It is sterling silver, so that's really cool. There are a couple more. If I looked really hard, I could probably figure out, you just make out the 25 there, but I can't see any date. This is King George V. The one date we could tell for sure would be if it was a 1911 where it didn't have the Dei Gratia, but this one has that. And then this one here, I can sort of make it out. It might be a 1916. It could be a 1918. I can't tell for sure. It's a 19 teens something. It's in pretty rough shape. So that one is certainly just melt. But there's some really, really cool stuff in here. Starting with some really old Victorian silver from Newfoundland. This is 20 cents, 1876. And this is another one that has lots of great detail. Victoria, DG, Regina, Newfoundland. This is an 1876H. I'm going to take a look and see what this is trending at right now. So this right now in a VF20, which this could very well be, is trending at $160. So again, well more than our $8. That is an awesome, awesome pickup. Next up, another one featuring Queen Victoria, 20 cents, 1899. This one might also be close to a VF. Here's an example where this is a more recent and more plentiful coin, 1899. This one here is going for about $35 in a VF. There's a couple of varieties here. I have found one of the varieties in the past. We'll just take a quick peek at this one. Got it under the scope here, and here is the 1899, and this is what is known as the large 9 or large 99. We're just looking at the shape of this 9. If we look in the Charlton catalog, here it is. That's what we've got, matches up with our 9s, looking at the bottoms of these 9s. The other one is the hooked 99, and you can see the base of the 9 circles back in, and it's got this ball in that space. We don't have that here, but I did find that on a previous silver purchase. So here's the 20 cents, 1899, not nearly as good condition, of course. You can see I got this back in 2024. Although the obverse shows lots of good detail. Not as nice as here. We'll throw that under the scope and we'll just take a peek here close up. You can see that 9 very hooked. So that's a cool example of finding some varieties, particularly these old Queen Victoria coins, the Newfoundland and Canada. There's a lot of different die varieties, repunched dates, over dates, all sorts of stuff. And that's just really, really neat. But so we've added another variety to the collection, and one that is also worth more than melt, significantly more. And here's what we've got in the Canadian. The earliest we have here is the earliest dated one, because we had a Victoria with no date, but this is a 1902. This is the first year, Edward VII, and you can see how much detail is gone from Edward. That was really the high point of the coin. And so this is what you would commonly see for these Edward VII coins. 1902, this is an H, that H down there, the Heaton Mint in Birmingham, England. This is minted at 800,000. If it was a 1902 without the H, that was only minted at 464 to be worth more of a premium for sure. That's a pretty low grade coin. We got a 1909. Now we're getting into metal orientation here. 1909 with Edward VII, pretty worn. And then we're getting into King George King George V. That's George VI's dad. 1917. Lots of tarnishing on that bad boy. Got a couple 1917s. Pretty worn. Couple of 18s. These are pretty worn. These are probably not worth any significant premium over silver. This one you can barely see the date. I think that's an 18 anyhow. Pretty worn. There's a 19. These are all sterling silver up until 1919, after which we switched to 80% silver. So a lot of these ones in pretty rough shape. And then we've got some later ones. This 1929 might be the nicest of all of them. Check that one out. It's actually got great detail. We'll flip this guy over. Yeah, this one's actually pretty nice. This one might be... This is in a high VF and maybe a low XF or EF. All the band of the crown, all the jewels. Most of the detail is there. Little rim dings, but that's a beautiful coin. The key dates that we hope to see, of course, in something like this, there's a small crown 1906, which would be thousands of dollars. But the 1904 is the date that is the lowest minted. 1908 would be another good date. And in the George V years, the 1927 is the key date. And I've got that right here on my mat, in case we found it. 1927, 468,000. 21 and 15, of course, are other dates that we would want to see in the George V. We also got a 1930. That's probably in a VG, verging on an F. And there's a 1919, pretty rough shape. I already saw that one. This is what I was looking at, the 1931. Pretty rough too. Okay, now I think we're going to get into these guys, and this is what I'm excited about, because for these ones we paid so little for just the silver value. If we can find something really good, the premium is going to be pretty considerable. And I almost missed it. We had a couple more modern ones here. There's a 1964. This is definitely what we would consider junk silver, absolutely. And then we have this one here, the 1967. Actually, it looks like it's in decent shape. It's just got some tarnishing on it. This one here features the Canadian Lynx. I often refer to it as a bobcat, but they're apparently different. So it's the Canadian Lynx. And this could be either 50% or 80% silver. It's going to be really hard for us to tell. Now we'll get into the little guys here. And a good way to start might be just an unceremonious dump here. And we got a few interesting things. I see Victoria, that's cool. I got Newfoundland in here. We got 5 cents and 10 cents. And then that one's, well, pretty rough. But then we got a piece of jewelry. It's not a coin. Who knows what that is? I don't even know if that's real silver. I mean, it could be. Who knows? Got a bit of a sticker. And something that is not at all silver. That's a 1985. It's just got some really odd environmental damage and toning, kind of rainbow toning. We'll set that aside because that is not what we're interested in right now. I'll sort these guys out and we'll see what we got. And you might have seen this. This one just caught my eyes. I was about to put the camera away. This is Roi des Français. So this is King of the French, Louis-Philippe I. And I don't know what that is. That is... It looks like it might be in 1846. We'll set this aside for now. We'll take a look in a bit. I'll sort these out and we'll come back to it. All right, I got all these sorted out, and this is an interesting little hodgepodge of stuff. So we've got a bunch of more quote-unquote modern silver. This is what we'd expect to see in a typical junk silver bin. We got 1960, We got 62, 64, a couple 65s, and again a 1967. This could be 50% or 80% silver. We don't know. That is really just worth its silver content for sure. But we got a bunch of other stuff. Well, speaking of worth its silver content, we got a bunch of damaged and dateless. Like, look at this. You wouldn't even know that that's a coin until you flip it over and see good old King George V. That is going to be just worth its silver. Another one here, pretty rough. I don't think we're going to get a date off of that. It's also George V. Same here. I mean, you might be able to work to get it off, but it's not going to be worth any more than its silver content. That's all pretty rough stuff right there. But silver is silver. I'll take it. We found some more foreigns too. So we got a couple of mercury dimes from the States. This is a 1940. We'll flip it over. I don't see a mint mark at the base of the whatever that is. And let's see on this one right here, the 1945, pretty rough shape. These are going to be 90% silver, so that's good. So even more than Canadian dimes. We got one from Hong Kong. Check this out, 1894. And we've got another interesting portrait of Victoria, Victoria Queen. This is an oldie. This might pretty well be junk silver. Actually, it's worth more than I paid for it. I'm sure I paid $3.50 or thereabouts for it. I put it up, looked it up on Numista, and we can see it is 80% silver. And if I look down to 1894, it's showing here in a VG, and this might be a VG, $13. So that's a pretty good return on my $3.50. Either way, it is an old silver coin from across the world. So that is just really, really cool, but probably a VG. And then we've got this guy right here. I'm going to just see if I can look it up. I'm pretty sure that last digit is a 6. I'm not sure if that's an 1846. We'll see if we can narrow it down by the reign of Louis Philippe I. So I think we got a winner. I think we got 50 centime Louis Philippe, and this would be from 1846. And it's got all the right marks on here. We can see this example here is an 1847, but it's got the A mint mark. We've got the A mint mark. We've got all the right features here that line up with that, as well as the fact that it's 18 millimeters, about 2.5 grams. That all is consistent with a dime size coin, of course. It is not terribly rare, 1846. Well, I should say that, 3.3 million in a VG. It would be a $16 coin. This is not a VG. This is a pretty bad looking coin. But it is great foreign old silver, and we can actually see the date on there, 1846. So that's actually pretty cool that it's got a date, but barely. So in the Newfoundland dimes, we got 10 of them. We got 1917C, 1941. We got 1943C. I think there's a C on that 41 too, if I'm not mistaken. There sure is. And 1944. None of these are rare. These are all pretty common. But to put it in perspective, this 1943, this is actually minted at just over 100,000. I'll pull it up on here. 1943 C, 104,706. But so approachable, even at an EF 40, it's worth $10. So it's probably worth just a little bit more than my silver melt value. But these are pretty old and hard to come by coins that would be at a pretty decent price. And we got one pretty common, 1945 5 cent. All of these actually are sterling silver, the 10 cents. This 5 cent, I'll have to look it up. And I had a hunch that the composition changed in 1945 for the 5 and 10 cents, and it did. It moved to 80% silver from the sterling silver. So all of these bad boys here are sterling silver. This one here is 80%. And that's a pretty nice looking coin. And I get a different portrait of King George VI than we see on the Canadian coinage. In the older Canadian 5 cent and 10 cents. We have two of these fish scales, as they were so called, these tiny little 5 cent pieces. This is an 1885 Queen Victoria. That's exciting. I would say that this is probably, just looking at the detail, throw it under the scope, I think that might be in a fine condition. There's still lots of detail on the hair. That is a pretty nice looking coin. Now, what's exciting is that there are some varieties here, and they've got some value. There's a small 5, a small 5 over 5, a large 5, and a large 5 over 5. And you can see that even in a G, they're all between $14 and $50 here, but in an F, between $40 and $160. So there is a variety in here we'd want to see if we can find. It is so small at the naked eye, it's really hard to tell. So what I'm going to do is throw this up under the scope, and then we'll look at the comparison pictures on the Charlton catalog here to see what we're looking at. Well, here's the difference between the large 5 and the small 5. We can see the large 5 has a big top here. The small 5 is quite a bit smaller, and the large 5 has a really big ball. And then the 5 over 5 is some maybe re-engraved mint marks. The large 5, we can see there's another 5 sort of above it. The small 5, we can see some elements at the top there and by that little ball. And here's what we have. And I think what we've got is the small 5 over 5. So we can see it's got the small ball, the small top. We can see the little bit at the tip of the ball there at the top there. I think this is exactly what we've got. And that is the valuable one. The small 5 over 5 in an F is a $160 coin according to the Charlton catalog. So that is an awesome find. This is something that I paid like $1.75 for, if you think about that. So that's a huge find in here. That is awesome. The next one we have here is a pretty common 1913, but it's in beautiful condition. Look at that. It doesn't have much in the way of issues in the field at all. Throw this one under the scope. That's a beauty. It's got some nice toning on it. I'd say that's at least an EF. It could be verging into a low AU, and we'll check out the other side here too. Little minor signs of circulation, couple little scratches on it, which is unfortunate, but lots of detail. Probably an EF. That is awesome. Why that's awesome, of course, is that a 1913 is a $4 in a VG, but in an EF is about a $13 coin that we paid about $1.75 for. That is really nice. And in hand, it's just a beautiful looking coin with some really nice toning. So once again, I suspect that this video has run long, so I think I'm just going to leave it there for now. We'll come back. We'll just do another episode of this series where we look at the copper and other related stuff. There's just some really interesting old stuff in here that I don't want to gloss over too quickly. I mean, look at that. I see a date of 1809. That's crazy. I want to make sure I give each of these coins enough time, so we'll leave it at that. But this was pretty awesome. Again, some really old coins and some pretty valuable stuff and some unexpected finds like this 20 cent from 1858, that 1876H, that 1899, and a variety, a really cool variety that I think is a very valuable coin. And of course, some junk silver. If you enjoyed this look at some really old silver coins, please give the video a like, a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Cateroll Hunter, please hit the button so that you can see all of my videos when they come out. I've got new videos coming out all the time. Coin roll hunting, coin collections, junk silver, anything related to Canadian numismatics. I'll probably cover it at some time or another. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.